Hey everyone, and welcome. So picture this. You book a flight, get on the plane, but what if I told you the airline you paid doesn't even own that aircraft? It's super common for them to lease planes, but that brings up a really big legal question, right? If something goes wrong, who's on the hook? The owner? The airline? That's what we're digging into today, the whole world of air carrier liability in leased aircraft. So let's just lay it all out there. This is the core question we're trying to answer. When an airline leases a plane, who's actually liable to you, the passenger? Is it the company that owns the metal or the one that sold you the ticket? What do you think? Okay, so let's dive into what we call the aircraft lease problem. Now, to get to the bottom of this, especially in international air transport law, we've got to look at how the law itself, how legal thinking separates out the different kinds of leases. It's actually a pretty cool legal puzzle. And believe it or not, the entire answer boils down to one single crucial factor, and that is, was the plane leased with the crew or without them? Seriously, that's it. That one little detail changes everything. All right, first up, let's talk about Type 1. This is called the bare lease. And yeah, the name kind of gives it away, right? This is when an airline is leasing just the aircraft, the plane, and that's it. No crew, nothing else. So here's the formal definition of a bare lease. The owner, who we call the lessor, rents out the aircraft and only the aircraft. The airline that's doing the renting, the lessee, they're the ones who have to find the pilots, the cabin crew, and get the whole flight ready to go. Let's break down the roles here because it's super important. The lessor, the owner, their job is pretty much done once the contract is signed. They provide the plane, that's it. Think of them as just a party to a contract. But the lessee, they're running the whole show. They hire the crew, that crew takes orders from them, and they are the ones operating the flight. They have total operational control. And because of all that, the legal conclusion is crystal clear. In a bare lease, it's the lessee, the airline operating the flight, that gets what's called air carrier status. And that means they are solely liable. 100%, the buck stops with them. Okay, so that was the simple one. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. Type 2. The lease with crew. This one's a little more complicated. So in a lease with crew, the owner, the lessor, doesn't just hand over the plane. They rent it out with their own crew. And here's the really critical part. The lessor often stays responsible for the technical side of things, like air navigation. That is a massive difference from a bare lease. This setup actually creates two different legal roles, which is where things get interesting. On one hand, you've got the contractual carrier. That's the lessee, the airline whose name is on your ticket, the one you have a contract with. But then you also have the actual carrier. That's the lessor, the company that owns the plane and employs the crew, the one actually flying you from A to B. So what does this mean for liability? Well, it gets shared. Both the contractual carrier and the actual carrier are considered jointly and severally liable. And all that fancy legal term means is that you, the passenger, can go after either one of them for compensation, or you can go after both of them at the same time. The responsibility is shared. All right, let's wrap this up and put it all side by side. Here it is. Liability, the final answer. This chart really makes it easy to see the difference. So let's just run through it. First up, who's providing the crew? In a bare lease, it's the lessee, the airline renting the plane. In a lease with crew, it's the lessor, the owner. Simple enough. Now, what about carrier status? Well, in a bare lease, the lessee is the one and only air carrier. But with a crew lease, things split. The lessee is the contractual carrier, and the lessor is the actual carrier. And that brings us to the big one, liability. For a bare lease, remember, it's simple. The lessee is solely liable. But for a lease with crew, they are both on the hook, jointly and severally liable. So there you have it. When we're talking about aircraft leasing, figuring out who is responsible, it all boils down to one thing, the type of lease. You just have to ask that one simple question. Was there a crew included in the deal? The answer to that tells you everything you need to know.